Hello and welcome to another episode of the Peak City Podcast. I'm your host today for another solo pod, Zachary Ivy, and today we're doing another position rankings video. And today we have the dynamic, the incredible wide receivers. Now, I want to say disclaimer first. There are probably a huge grouping, and we'll get into this later on. We have some Q&A, ask us anything. So send a message, send a DM, send whatever you want. However, you can contact any of our hosts for questions, and we will answer those positionally as well. But there is a large grouping of wide receivers from probably 14 to 30 that I think are huge upside this year. So just want to make that clear. But that leads us into our first fantasy question. But before we do that, I want to say thank you so much for the outpouring of support. We've, had a few people reach out, have some different things going on. Great views so far. Keep it up. Let us know what you think. A lot of people sending messages, which is great. If you want to make it a little better, comment on the video after it's done. A lot of people in the premiere last time saying questions, but I really do appreciate it. Please even pause the video for a second or not. Let it play, like the video, comment. You hear every channel say it really is so important and helps us to get more opportunities to continue to do more of this, but we're going to do it regardless. So let's get into our first part of the day, which is the fantasy question of the day. This question is one that has kind of been around for a while, but it's a simple, would you rather have two wide receivers from the same team, or do you stay away from that and just get somebody else in that same grouping, that same tier, that same bubble, circle, however you want to phrase it for the way you look at your draft board? Some examples of this may be Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, go Birds, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I don't know what year you're in, but Chris Godwin and Mike Evans is not really the same as those other two, but Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, no. Anyways, those first two, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and maybe there's somebody else you believe in. The reason we bring this up is, yes, there are receivers lower down the totem pole that you don't mind having if you have a top receiver, in my opinion. A couple years ago, ironically, I did have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on the same team when they both were being productive. It was okay. I didn't enjoy it because you never really want to bench one because they're both wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. And if you have any type of injury or whatsoever, you're going to have to playing those guys down the stretch as well. It does give you that. You don't ever want to have a handcuff at receiver. That doesn't really make much sense. But so to answer the question simply, would you want to have two wide receivers from the same team? No. You really want to try to diversify if you can. I don't think it's a 100% never, but my personal opinion, expert opinion, if you will, is no, try to stay away from that. If you have a younger guy that you believe in, or you think that if a top guy goes down, his target share is going to increase to the point of being able to be used, then sure, go ahead and do it. But if not, no. All right, so getting into these rankings, of course, everybody's going to disagree on a lot of these. Let me know what you think. Have a little bit about each. Again, really enjoyed making, creating, and talking about the first video. We will have a little announcement here with probably one of our other co-hosts, whether it be Alexander or maybe even Teddy will hop on here if he gets into his football mode. We will have some questions that we're going to answer out. Anything you want to ask us, we're going to pull out the most significant ones related to that position, and then we'll fill in the time. There'll be about 20, 25-minute episodes of any questions you have. Maybe it's a specific player, and it does not have to be fantasy related, just football in general. It's a football channel. If you want it to be about between two players, keep, trade, cut, whatever you want to ask, any formats, we are open to anything. We've already gotten a lot for receivers, so if you have anything on running backs or tight ends, go ahead and send those. But yeah, really appreciate that. All right, let's hop into it. Long enough intro. All right, Tyreek Hill, number one receiver in the league. Tyreek Hill, number one receiver in the league. Fast, elite, healthy, possibly has 2,000 yards last year. There's really no reason to think he won't be as good this year, and maybe even better. Here's the thing with Tyreek. There's nothing he does that really gives you anything apart from help that thinks he's going to slow down. In between his coach, hitting the vape on the sideline, he does still have creative plays. And they only added more speed this offseason. They love speed. They want speed. He's the leader of the speed on this team. He's my number one wide receiver head into the season. He kind of can do it all. Behind the line of scrimmage, deep downfield, intermediate routes. He really is kind of a one-of-one with speed, with the ball in his hands. Maybe you want to say he tries to do too much, but it's worth it because he always pans out. And if you can get Tyreek, take him. I think if you are in a position in your fantasy draft, go fantasy for a second, and Tyreek is there, and you take him as the first receiver off the board, I would have no problems with that whatsoever. Number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, Jay Jettis, Justin Jefferson, set the league on fire. I know he wasn't the creator, but made the gritty a dance where you see anyone from first grade to the NFL now doing it. In any sport, really. You see people grittying around the base pass. You see them hitting a three, grittying down the court. He's that dynamic. He's that electric. And honestly, he's just arguably one of the most talented receivers in the league. You look at basically any metric, and he's near or at the very top. The obvious concern or question about his talent this year is his quarterback play, which does seem like somehow, not sure how this keeps happening, but Sam Darnold gets another chance to be the starting quarterback. And meanwhile, J.J. McCarthy is lurking in the shadows, not a Connor Stalions reference, but he is in the shadows ready to take over at some point. Here's some great advice for any young quarterback. I'll say this to you, JJ, and really Sam as well, not as young anymore. Throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. You want to be successful? Throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. You want to keep your job? Throw it to Justin Jefferson. He's got 3 people on him at the end of the game. Everybody knows it's going to him. Doesn't matter. Still one of the craziest catches I've ever seen in my life when they set up for the field goal at the end. I mean, he is incredible. He's spectacular. When he's on the field, sit back, enjoy the show. All right, moving on down the list. You may have these in different orders, but these are probably your top receivers as well. But it'll get a little tricky near the end. Number 3, we have CeeDee Lamb. So all you people saying I'm biased and I'm a hater and I'm this, I'm that. CeeDee Lamb, number 3 on the list. Last season, most receptions in the whole league. 2nd in yards. 3rd in touchdown. The most targets of anybody in the entire NFL. He also had the most yak per reception in the NFL. He was basically at the top of all the stats. And if you remember, for the first half-ish of the season, he kind of wasn't getting along super well with Dak. And you could say, well, he's demanding the ball. He's a diva. Well, look, as much as you may not want it on your team, if he's on your team, you got to get him the ball. Look how good he is with it. They get him the ball, they typically won. And then after week 11 or 10, whichever one their bye week was, you dive into it. We mentioned this with Dak. The offense accepted their scheme, what they're going to succeed at. And you know what? Most of the time that recipe was, hey, Dak, get it out quick, and more often than not, get it to CeeDee. Again, led the league in receptions, targets, 2nd most yards, 3rd most touchdowns. So it's not like he only catches 1-2 yard passes. Most yak per reception, getting his hands so he can run. There's few people. He reminds me of kind of not the same exact player, but Odell early in his career where he could just take a slant to the house. That's CeeDee. He catches a crossing route. You get a linebacker falling behind. One-on-one with safety downfield, good luck. He's probably going to shake him, run past him. He probably has the lowest floor of any of these receivers just because of his situation he's in. So that's something to think about if you could argue, well, this person or that person has this. I do think CeeDee probably has the lowest or the highest floor, I should say. Not lowest, which means he's least likely to fail of anyone else, is an easier way to put that. So CeeDee Lamb is our number 3. Number 4, we have Jamar Chase. Now, this may be more projection than production because if you look at his numbers, he's not at the top of the top of the top, but he's Jamar Chase. There's no clear number 2 options. T. Higgins, contract, all that is kind of weird and murky. Look up T. Higgins' numbers last year. It's not as good as you would think. And at the point of filming this, still not resolved. Jamar Chase, clear connection with Burrow. They passed on offensive linemen when they drafted him, so Joe wanted his guy. He got his guy. Joe and Jamar, again, made a Super Bowl run. They've not fully been back there, but when they're clicking, it's hard to see somebody much better. You can argue Jamar's number 1 in the league just on a pure talent standpoint. But in my mind, it's close to the end of a half. He's probably the receiver you want. How many times have you seen Burrow connect with Chase, whether to put them in field goal range or to literally score a touchdown? Everybody in the whole stadium knows where the ball's going. Doesn't matter. He's going to him. He did have 100 receptions last year. I think he built on that even more this year. And he's going to be a top 5 player. He's a superstar in this league, and Jamar Chase is going to fit comfortably. Number 5, A.J. Brown. Birds fans don't be mad at me that I have him this low, and other fans don't be mad at having him this high. That's kind of the thing with A.J. Brown. One thing he said this offseason that I just keep thinking about over and over and over and just gets me so excited is He wants to retire in an Eagles uniform, which an Eagles fan, again, makes me extremely happy. Now, on the field, we look at last year's numbers, 8th interceptions, 5th in yards, 4th in first downs. We expect this offense to be better and click at a much higher rate. Again, we talked about it with Jalen Hurts. They really didn't have any adjustments. They had the lowest pre-snap motion in the league, which basically means, hey, we're going to have a stale, boring offense. We're going to line up one-on-one. I'm going to try and beat you. We're not doing a whole lot of creativity. We're not doing any of this. We're just going to beat you with our guys. And even in those conditions, AJ still won most of the time. He had those several games in a row with 100 yards, just catching the ball everywhere. He's not obviously as fast and dynamic as Tyreek, but he can do anything as far as going up, catching it behind. I think him and Jalen build where they were. There's another pass catcher in the mix for all of you Saquon fans. Wait for the running back rankings to see where he is. But we think the offense is going to continue to grow and elevate with Kellen Moore. I think is consensus across the league. AJ got his money. Devonta got his money. Saquon's here, got his money. They're all happy. They all are going to want the ball, of course. The whole, like, AJ's not happy. He's this, that. He wants to be here. He signed a deal. He's staying here. Some people just care about winning so much, and it looks different for different people. He sits comfortably on this list, and with the creative play call and design, I think it gives him even more opportunity. I expect a huge year from A.J. Brown. Again, maybe you want to argue he has a lower floor, a bigger chance of not being up here as the next guy on the list, but A.J. is my number 5 receiver. Number 6, the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, Lions fans, I know you already hate me. I understand. I admitted you QB. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched quarterback ranking video, go ahead and watch it. It'll be at the end of this one. But that was the biggest feedback from the quarterback list, Jared Goff. Look, you want to put Jared Goff on the list, take somebody off? I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'll debate you, but I'm not going to argue. The Sun God, an emerging wide receiver going into the last season, kind of had this hype, this build-up. He's going to have a good year. He was better than you could have expected. Incredible. He solidified his rankings as a top player. Maybe you want to argue he's 5, 4, 3, whatever you want to say. You want to side him up? I'm not even going to hate on you for that. Second most passes in the league he caught. Only one person caught more. Third most in yards. 6th most touchdowns among pass catchers. So he wasn't just catching between the 20s. Despite having a big running back and Jahmyr Gibbs, who came on at the end of the year, he still was getting his touchdowns. Targeted 5th most in the league. They have a top tight end as well. Everybody's all about the tight end and how he's doing it, despite there being so many productive players. And I think that's why you could argue Goff as well. Don't get mad at me. But I don't think that hurts him. And unless Dan Campbell just decides, hey, I'm going to start throwing the offensive linemen every time we're in the end zone, Sun God's going to continue to impress. He's top 5 at almost everything you look at stats-wise. And honestly, his talent is through the roof. Personnel-wise, there's really no reason to doubt him. They have a great offensive line. No real concerns for St. Brown. Solid pick. I don't know that he's going to get you up to number 1 without health, but he's not going to be lower than 6, 7, probably throughout the entire season. All right, so now we take a little break. Here's a tier break for you. This is where I think you can make the arguments. I think those top 6 are the top 6. You can switch them, move them around. I think that's the top 6 wide receivers. If you don't agree, leave a comment. If you do agree, leave a comment, like the video. Maybe you want to change the order, but please comment, like. I know I keep saying that. We appreciate the feedback. If these first videos keep getting these views, we're going to keep it going and actually start building something here. So we're very excited for that. But this is where I think controversy really does ensue. I think those top 6 are the top 6. Again, sort them however you want. This is where it gets different. All right, so those are our 6 receivers. Number 7, we have Davante Adams. Yes, he's probably lost a step compared to his peak dominance. Again, he was absolutely electric. Let's go backwards for these. His quarterback offensive structure as a whole, it does kind of scare me. I don't know exactly what their plans are in Vegas. Maybe more than just a little bit of scaring, but they do draft a tight end to be a playmaker. They have 2 tight ends, but they're going to try to get the ball often. They're adding more weapons, and in some cases that could take away. In his case, I think it frees him up a little. Targeted 2nd most last year, top 10 in receptions. And here's the thing, he still was top 8 in touchdowns. So if you're like, how is he 7th on your list? Besides just his talent, only 7 people scored more touchdowns than him last year. And I don't think their running back position got better, right? Like, maybe you feel that way. I don't think Davante Adams is going to have a bad year. I think maybe he's a top 10, top 12 receiver, and so I have him ranked a little too high. Here's what I'm going to say. In my right mind, making a list, he also was only targeted less than CeeDee. Keep that in mind. But when I'm making a list, Devontae Adams is too good. His footwork, his route running, he's too elite. Just give him some good passes, and my concern lessens a lot. He's just too good to not be on this list somewhere, somehow. And I don't know how many more years he'll be here. Maybe he's not my top 10 next year going into the season. But for now, I'm glad to have him on the list, and I'm going to stand by it. Devontae Adams, number 7 receiver. Number 8, perhaps biggest, most incredible, sensational storyline last season. Actually, let me say his name so I can timestamp it. One of the funnest names to say as well. Number 8, Puka Nacua. Again, as I just said, one of the most absolute electric, sensational storylines of all last year. Plus, again, like I said, a name is fun to say. He doesn't have Cup. Irrelevant. It doesn't mean Cup doesn't matter. Cup is still coming back into the year, going back to last season, being this guy, being the man, Triple Crown a few years ago, amazing, Breakfast Club, Matthew Stafford. Here's the thing. Cup's still going to be productive, I think, as long as he's there. But Puka's clearly the alpha in this offense now. Stafford loves him. He has the trust he's already built with him. Puka last year, everybody started talking about the end of the year that he could break the rookie record. Here's the thing. Go back and look at his first few weeks. Go back and look throughout the year. He could have been even better. Now, some of his games were absolutely insane. I understand that. So there's probably going to be some regression. But he was top 9 in receptions, top 4 in yards, 7th in targets in the whole league. And Kyron Williams and whoever else is the running back for the Rams on that given day are probably going to score because Sean McVay, it's about time we start really, truly respecting him. Up maybe even more the red zone threat. At least last year, Stafford did look to Cup when the red zone way more often at times than Puka. Even between the 20s, even if Puka's not scoring it at a high rate with his touchdowns, he's still so productive, so good. And he's already a top 10 receiver in this league. He's that good. He's just one of those great starts of career where you didn't have him on your radar last year. If you did, you're probably lying. If you did, then hit me up. You need to join us because that's impressive. He didn't really have expectations. He just starts balling and balling and balling. And everybody's kind of like, insanity, but he's better than that. And quite frankly, he never stopped. Even the playoffs, the last time we saw Puka, let me read the stat line for you. 9 catches, 181 yards, and a touchdown in a playoff game. They lost, obviously, at the very end. Heartbreaking loss to the Lions. But when you're capable of doing that, it's not as if he was this unknown and had a few good weeks and people figured him out. The Lions were very aware of who their man was in the offense, and they couldn't stop him in the playoffs. The Lions almost lost their entire season because he was that good. And he still has a quarterback who maybe not as elite as he was, or maybe not as talented as he once was, still can sling it, still can get it out, still can throw it. And I like this Rams team overall a lot better than most people are, especially on the offensive end. Puka left that impression on us. I don't think his success skips a beat going into this year. I really, really don't. Number 9, Mike Evans. Yes, number 9, I do have Mike Evans. That's too high, right? You think he's too high? Here's what I'll say about Mike Evans. He actually may be the most underrated player at the position. And maybe you don't have him top 10, but he's got to be in your top 15, 16. Think of the quarterbacks, the coaches, the offensive coordinators. Doesn't matter. 1,000 yards, Mike Evans. Yes, we know that stat. Everybody's heard that stat. We've said that stat over and over. But that's actually kind of crazy to think about, right? He always gets 1,000 years. 1,000 yards, sorry, not years. Seems like he's been playing for 1,000 years. But if I was just to ask you right now, without you looking up anything, whatever, how was his last season? You probably remember a few highlights, some crazy plays, but kind of slow, not as crisp. If you didn't watch or keep up with this team, again, shouts out to my Buccaneer fans. But perhaps you might think he didn't have a great season. Now, if you look at this whole list and you just look at receptions, he's not near them. But yet he's still 9th in receiving yards. So he doesn't even need the targets to get the yards. And do you know how many touchdowns he had? He tied in the NFL for the lead with Tyreek Hill. So if I was to tell you, hey, top 9 in receiving yards and led the touchdown in the NFL, you say, oh, yeah, that's probably a great receiver. But then when I say Mike Evans, you're like, oh, wait, what? He did? Huh? Probably. You get near the goal line, are they handing it off? Probably not. Maybe Rachaad White, progresses a little. Mike Evans, we're throwing the fade. Stop it. I dare you. The rapport with Baker's only increased. It seems like he actually likes him. They're getting along well. He's going to improve with him. He's not as dynamic, not as electric, maybe not even as crisp as some of these other guys. He's not going to get to that top 5 category. but he's one of these receivers that needs a little respect, and I'm glad he's on my list as well. He's consistent, a true factor every single week. When you're facing his team, he's going to show up. He's going to be there. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. 9th in receiving yards and led their NFL in touchdowns, tied with Tyreek Hill, despite not having near as many receptions. So do with that as you will. All right, number 10 on our list, we have Garrett Wilson. This is a guy we're just going to basically not even look at his stats from a season ago. Maybe the most abysmal quarterback play we've seen. It's still a disgrace that the Jets, they can complain all they want about you can't put your team in that situation with that much talent to have Zach Wilson and whoever else the heck they put out there at quarterback last year. Despite that, the actual Wilson is a good football player. Garrett, he still would flash his true talent. He's one of the only wide receivers that I've ever seen intercept a ball from a defensive back, from a cornerback for a touchdown. And you know the play I'm talking about. If not, look it up. Incredible. He literally is getting touchdowns on plays that shouldn't even be touchdowns. Just mentioning Zach Wilson's name made me kind of sick. But if he has Aaron Rodgers healthy throughout this year, no chance he's not higher on this list next year. He's as impressive with anybody with the ball in his hands as anybody in the whole league. Get it in his hands. He has a chance to take it, has a chance of scoring, has a chance of moving the ball down the field. Hard worker. All you hear is he's constantly working, constantly building, wants to learn, wants to grow. And more likely than not, for the rest of his career, until he's to the point where he starts declining, he's going to be on this list. And that is a crazy thing to say about somebody that we've not even really truly seen that production yet from. And look, I'm obviously super high on the guy. He's just way too good for it not to happen. He's that talented that we've not even seen him do it yet. And I'm saying he's going to be a top 10 receiver the rest of his career. Hate me if you want to. One disclaimer, Buckeye fans, Cardinals fans, I didn't consider rookies for any of these lists. There's not going to be any rookies on any of the lists. Sorry. Should have said that earlier. So if not saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. would have been on the list, but he didn't even have a chance. I didn't consider him. I didn't want to think about it. So if that's who you're mad about, let me know. Let me know how good you think he's actually going to do. Where will he be at the end of this year? Keep this going throughout the offseason. Let me know what I got right, wrong. Maybe somebody you're excited to see. Maybe there's somebody who you think isn't on this list and you understand why they're not yet, but you're projecting that when I do this video next year, or if I do an end of the year recap, he's going to clearly be a top 10 receiver, somebody you really believe in. Like and subscribe, please. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. This has been another episode of the Pick City Podcast, positional rankings, wide receivers. Thank you so much.